Hey everyone, we are over here at the new bridge facility, and this is going to be a series of videos especially for the sound engineers and for the band worship leaders, talking about the essentials of what needs to happen in order to make sure that the band gets up and running. A lot of these are ideas that are going to apply to both locations, so you'll want to pay special attention regardless of whether you're at MKE or at the main location. So let's start with the most important pieces, which is going to be actually turning on the entire system. So if you're over here at the main facility over in Muskego, the first step is we actually need to run over to the Mac. There is a lot of electronic stuff that's happening that's controlled via a network. And if you try to turn on the board here without going through this step, you're gonna not get anything through the mains. So we'll log into the computer over here. If you don't know, the password is gospel. It's listed directly on the front of the computer. And this is actually the main screen that you're looking for. If you don't know where this is, it's gonna pop up in our Chrome browser, and I'm just gonna show you where to find it. Up on the desktop, up in the upper left corner of the screen is the AVL controls, and that is gonna pop you up here to this screen. And in the top left corner, you'll see audio control for the auditorium. If this is red, you will not get any sound out of the mains. So you wanna take a second to turn this on to green. And now we are actually live. Next, that brings us over to the board here. So hopefully the cover should be on, which means you're just gonna remove it. And over in the very back right, just above the power cable, is the power switch. And this is gonna turn on our Behringer X32. Wait a second, and the screen is gonna light up. You'll see everything load in place. You might even see the faders move a little bit. And now the entire PA system is turned on. The last step before you start going through sound check is you need to make sure that you load the default scene here. So the easiest way to do this is all of these sections on the board have a view button. You'll see there's a view here and a view here and a view here, and all of these sections of the board have view, and that changes what shows up on this screen. So for our scenes section, there's a little spot right here in the bottom right that says scenes. We're gonna click view, and that's gonna change what we see here on the board. So if we go all the way up to the very, very top, it says bridge default. You're gonna see on the left-hand side of the screen is the go button, and you're actually gonna push this button in, and now it's gonna ask you, are you sure this is the scene that you wanna load? And you're gonna confirm by hitting you can either push this button in here where it says confirm, or you can push the right arrow, which matches what shows up here, to say yes. And now the board has been loaded to its default state, which is where you wanna start from every single time. So the next steps is to actually plug into the stage, and there are labels located all over this stage. The reason I'm recording from the front of the stage here at first is because everything is done from the audience's perspective, or from the sound engineer's perspective. So if you say front, that means the front of the stage, the spot that's closest to the audience. And if you say to the right, that means this side of the stage. If you say to the left, that means this side of the stage. And if you say center, then obviously that means in the middle. So we have 5 locations on the stage to plug into. We have the front right, the front center, the front left, the back right, and the back left are our 5 locations. So here we are on the stage. We're currently on the front right corner, again from audience's perspective of the stage. And you'll see that down inside the box are labels like FR1, FR2, and these labels are meant to help you figure out where things are gonna go later on into the board. At each of the facilities, you're gonna find one of these plots here, a section that says audio inputs. And the middle and right-hand columns are already done for you, but on the left-hand side is where you're going to be putting your name or your instruments. Now, unlike before, where all of the instruments were tied to specific inputs, so you would just label a certain input like this is where the guitar goes, this is where the acoustic goes. It doesn't quite work like that anymore. So the nice part is that things are a little bit more manageable and malleable, where you can make adjustments on the fly. But the downside is that there are some extra steps you have to go and do inside the board, which is why we're spending time going through all this. So ideally what you would do is when you would plug something in, then you would come over here and you would write something into the board. So if you were in front right 1, which is where we just were a second ago, you would go and write your name or your instrument inside here. If you're working by yourself as the band leader, then it's your job to remember where this goes, so that way you can make sure the board is getting the right inputs. If you're working with the sound engineer, then once this sheet is all filled out, you would hand this to the sound engineers, and then they know where things are supposed to plug into the board. So now coming back to the board, here's where things all really start to come together. Let's say that we plugged into that input that said FR1. And if we go one spot across, that says number 20. Now number 20 doesn't necessarily mean the channel in the board. In fact, what it actually means is the channel that's on the snake in the back. And we have to use that information to tell us how to actually get signal to the right channels. So let's say that you were a violinist and you were trying to plug into that spot that we just did, FR1. You can pick any spot on the board, but preferably you want to try and fill out like a blank slot. So maybe, let's say here we have a spot that has no label. So this is a free spot that we can put things inside of. So we're gonna first hit the select button above that channel. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go all the way to the upper left corner where it says configuration/preamp. And we're gonna hit another one of these view buttons. And you'll see that when I click that, it changes what we see on the screen. And over on the left-hand side where it says source, this source number is what we want to match to that board input number that we were just looking at a second ago. So if you'll remember, when we plugged into front right 1, we tied that with channel number 20. That's where it was connected to. I'll show you that again here on the sheet. So we looked at FR1 was what the stage input label was, and that was attached to 20. So because we found that, because we want 20, we're gonna actually use this knob to now go down and select board input number 20. And once we get to 20, after I get here, I'm gonna push this button in again to hit select, and you'll notice that spare slot that I had used before is now not black anymore, but it has a label. You might be saying, Alex, but it says shaker. How do we fix that? I'm glad you asked. Let's go up here to the right side of the screen, and there's a spot that says library. And we're gonna click on that really quick. And you'll see that the screen changes again, and there's different names for different instruments. And we said we want this one to be a violin. So let's use our second knob here under where it says the load preset to go down to where it says violin. And all this still needs to happen while we have the channel that we want selected. So we have to keep this green button going the whole time. But now that we're on top of violin, we want all of these little guys selected where it says recall scope, and all of them are selected already. And we're gonna push in this button, and it's gonna say, are you sure this is what you wanna do? And we're gonna follow by saying yes. We're gonna hit the confirm button on the bottom right corner of the screen. We click that, and now our violin is loaded into channel number 9. This does a lot of things for us. It doesn't just handle the label, but it also helps you with some of the EQ settings, some of the sends for extra little effects like reverb and compression. So it does a lot of things for you, whether you're just the sound engineer or just the band leader. This is gonna help do a lot of heavy lifting for you. The last step before we finish is we need to talk about gain levels. So going into the board, before we even start moving the fader, we would ask our musicians to check their instruments. And when they do check their instruments, we're gonna see input levels start to come in. So at this point, we should actually start to see some things show up either on the meter here, or if you, assuming you have the right instrument selected, you'll see it come up over here. If you have the window showing up, it'll show up over here. There's lots of places where it can show up on the meter, but the tried and true one would be where our instrument is plugged into. And this meter doesn't represent the actual volume that's coming out, it represents the level of the instrument coming in. And ideally, we want this meter to pop up exactly at -18. It's where the meter starts to change from green to orange. And the way that you adjust this is once you have the instrument you want selected, you're gonna come up here to where it says gain. And if you turn it clockwise, that'll increase the gain. And if you turn it counterclockwise, that'll decrease the gain. If you start to turn it clockwise, you'll see the meter popping up here. And once it starts to hit that -18 level, that's the sweet spot. That's exactly where you want it to be. No more and no less. If you start to get a little too high, you start to see yourself popping into this -9 territory. That's too much. We got to back it off. And if it's too low, if you're just hitting the -30 and we're not getting into the -18, then that's a little bit too low and we got to start to bring it up. You rinse and repeat this idea with every instrument, and then you've done 90% of the most important work. There's obviously still things to do, like figuring out the actual fader levels and figuring out how to do EQ and stuff like that. But if you don't get this part of the sound check right, then everything else falls apart. So if you can get this done, you've done 90% of the hard work, and everything else gets a lot easier from here. This is gonna be the last portion of the training that's important for the band leaders. There's still more to talk about with the sound engineers, but band leaders, if you're trying to do your monitor mixes, then this is how you can handle this. Obviously, you have the phone apps. If you've ever used those before, those are really handy because they only control monitor mixes. They don't control any of the stuff coming out front. But for those of you who don't want to use that, you prefer the board, then I'm going to show you how to do it here. So the easiest way to do this is to actually start to use some of the buttons on the right-hand side of the board. We have these extra sections called buses, and the buses are where the majority of our monitor mixes live. So if I click buses 1 through 8, we'll see the labels show up. So this is monitor A, B, C, D, and these are our physical monitors, the ones that have just the letters to them. They're located left to right from audience perspective again. So A, B, C, D, left to right. If we want to change the mix of what happens here, the first thing we'll need to do is select the monitor we want to change. So here we're at monitor A, and if I click that, we've now selected that monitor. And then right here in this black part between the groupings of faders is a section that says sends on faders. And when we select this, you're gonna see the entire left side of the board change. What I just did was I told the board now that what I want these faders to look like are what's being sent to this monitor. So now when I change faders here, what I'm actually doing is I'm adjusting the mix for monitor A. And so anything you see me move here now affects that monitor. If I want to go back, all I have to do is hit this sends on faders button again, and you'll see everything turns back to what the front of house mix, meaning the mix coming out of the main speakers, looks like. Now, if I want to do that with any of the other monitor mixes, and this could be the main monitors, or this could also be the in-ear monitors, I just rinse and repeat this idea. I can click sends on fader, and then I can click the monitor that I want to mix. And if I click this one, now I'm mixing monitor B, monitor C, monitor D. The drum in-ear monitor, you hear the faders just moved a bit. The keys in-ear monitor, the bass in-ear monitor, maybe you can hear the faders moving over here. This is what we're all starting to change. And then once I'm done, I just click the sends on fader button, and now it all moves back. And that's how you can adjust the monitor mixes for your in-ears and your main stage monitors.